Welcome to the Fast Leader Podcast, where we explore convenient yet effective shortcuts that will help you get ahead and move forward faster by becoming a better leader. And now, here's your host, customer and employee engagement expert, and certified emotional intelligence practitioner, Jim Rimbach.
Need a powerful and entertaining way to ignite your next conference, retreat, or team building session? My keynotes don't include magic, but they do have the power to help your attendees take a leap forward by putting emotional intelligence into their employee engagement, and customer-centric leadership practices. So bring the infotainment creativity of the Fast Leader Show to your next event, and I'll help your attendees get over the hump now. Go to beyondmorale.com/speaking to learn more. Okay, Fast Leader Legion, I'm looking forward to today's show because my guest is one of those folks that I look to for inspiration. Mike Wittenstein grew up in Orlando, Florida, on the same land his grandparents grew oranges and raised dairy cows. He was born with an entrepreneurial streak, having started a woodworking venture at age 13, which paid for his senior year abroad in Brazil. College included another 3 semesters overseas in Brazil and the former USSR. The start of Mike's professional life included stints in travel, banking, and real estate. When Mike was young, his ability to see patterns and opportunities sooner than others put him on the outside a bit, as others found him out of touch with their current reality. Once he learned to slow down and change his language from future state to current state, things got much easier. And then Mike found his love of story and tech when he co-founded one of the world's first digital agencies. Mike's entrepreneurial skills served him well as IBM's e-visionary for global services, where he started 3 consulting practices, the last one in customer experience design. Next, Mike founded Story Miners in 2002 to continue mastering the art and science of customer experience and to build the business. Mike currently lives in Marietta, Georgia, living a life that can serve as an example to others with his wife Lois and his daughter Hannah. Some weekends he gets to build furniture in his basement and workshop. Mike also has a son in college at Georgia Tech, Isaac. Mike Wittenstein, are you ready to help us get over the hump?
Absolutely. Happy hump day.
Well, all right. Thanks, Mike. I appreciate you being here with me today. Now, I've given our listeners a little bit about you, but can you tell us what your current passion is so that I can get to know you even better?
Sure. You know, my uncle told me a long time ago that if you're happy at what you do, if you do what you love and love what you do, that you have a good life. And I am so excited to say that I've got a good life right now. I do what I love, which is customer experience design that helps businesses with their strategy, frontline people to enjoy their life a lot more serving customers, and of course, create some value for customers. It's so much fun as an international speaker to jump around between cultures and to bring stories of one area to another part of the world. That was one of the unexpected pleasures for me. We're not the only innovators in the world in the United States. There are lots of cool things going on around the world. And if you open your eyes and your ears, you can see things, you can find patterns that can really help things here in this country as well.
You know, it's really interesting that you say that because one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show is because to me, you're an inspirational example of that whole thing. And you didn't necessarily use the word exactly, but that mindfulness component. And for us, I think we get so busy, at least for me, I get so busy that oftentimes I just don't see some of those small details and those small opportunities that could potentially make a really big impact. And I know you talked about having the ability to see patterns and things like that. And that's also recognized as one of those big skill sets and values that, you know, are needed in individuals and organizations. But it sounds like you actually have gone through some activities in order to be more mindful. What do you do in order to do that?
Well, I spent some time in between undergraduate and graduate school doing a wide variety of different jobs. I was clueless as to what I really wanted to do. And when I was in each of those different jobs, sometimes they were fun, sometimes they were frustrating. But I remember having a chat with my Aunt Norma, and she told me, Michael, don't worry about it. It's okay. Everybody goes through this. That made me feel better. But then she gave me a really good piece of advice. She said, file that stuff away in your head. Come up with a little way to organize the things that happen to you, the things that you see. You're going through all these different businesses. Find out what the owners did in the early days and what's going on now. And you'll start to find that you'll be able to access all those different experiences as life goes on. So without knowing if it would work or not, I tried it, and actually it works. So what I did is I paid attention when I walked into a furniture maker, for example, because I loved woodworking. So I had a job making dental furniture for a couple of months. And I looked at the condition of the shop and the way the guy treated his employees and what the sales were like. And the marketing materials and everything. And I learned about his patterns. I learned about his psyche, his kind of way of treating people, his way of seeing the world. And I filled the gap. I started looking at how did he go from thinking about the world this way to making that decision. So consulting is a great way to accelerate your learning because you can go in and see what other people's decisions ended up with. Usually you have to wait years and look at your own decisions to see what turns out. But by working with so many companies, that's where I started to get that feeling for what did somebody do a long time ago that made the business the way it is today.
That's a really good point. I often talk about, being able to utilize and leverage your core in order to help you move forward. Well, a lot of times what we end up doing is to seek growth, to seek development, to seek advancement. We often go into areas where we have really no strengths, no experiences, and we find ourselves at a point of failing even faster. So I think oftentimes we don't have that inner work, that inner look, and identifying those things that really got us to where we are, and using those to leverage us forward. So if you were to say that there was one thing that somebody could do in order to help them with that inward look, what would it be?
Well, I guess it depends on what age you're at, because when you're in your late 20s, you start to come into this feeling of your own personal power. You realize that people will listen to you, that what you know matters and can create value for others. If you're in your 30s, you're learning about your own style and your effect on others. When you're in your 40s, you're starting to learn how to wreak positive change on the world. You're also starting to aggregate different disciplines and thinking from different ways of working in order to create the solutions that you're a part of. So the first word that you brought up, mindful, is probably the thing that I would recommend to people that are looking for a little bit of direction. Just be a little bit more mindful. Pay attention to what's going around you. Pay attention to how things are making you feel. In the customer experience world, for example, when you go shopping or when you eat out, see if you can translate how that digital sign is snapping images at you. And does it make you feel more relaxed? Does it make you feel like you want to experiment with a new dish? Does it make you feel aggravated and frustrated because you already get enough commercials when you're watching your paid cable TV at home? Can you tell I have an issue with that? Yeah. So being mindful is a great first step. Once you've opened your mind and you've kind of relaxed your thinking a little bit, you can start to pick up on some of the patterns. At first, and the younger you are, you'll start picking up on patterns that matter to you. As you get older, you'll start to be able to push those aside, not to subjugate them, but just to temporarily let the patterns that affect other people come to the front. And that's when you can become a really good designer, because most designers don't design for themselves. Some very great artists and architects said, I really didn't care about my clients. I did it for me. Paraphrased. But when you're in the service businesses, you really are designing for other people. So when you learn what that elderly gentleman needs as he's walking through the threshold of your store, or what the lady who just lost her husband needs as she's being cared for in a hospital, you start to develop an empathy. And using that empathy, you don't need lots and lots of market research. You can just use a unit of one. You can use a human being who's living and breathing and feeling and caring and start to design for them. But you have to be able to remove your own bias. You have to be able to get the noise in your head down to a level where you can pay attention to somebody else.
Thank you for sharing that. As you were talking, I started thinking about a lot of different things, and I started going to a place where, for me, I have a pretty big background of managing a lot of folks in an operation setting, and I started thinking about, what you just described works in an employee engagement and an employee experience perspective as well. It's the same types of core things to be able to be mindful, to focus on them, to help them move forward, and then ultimately, they win, and so does everybody else in the process.
Jim, let me throw something else in. One of the things I love about customer experience design is that it's an integrative discipline. On its own, it doesn't really create that much value. But when you tie it in with operations and finance and people and call centers and design and technology and retail and whatever your favorite words are, it has the ability to let a whole bunch of different ways of thinking and working and doing all collaborate quite nicely. So you can get some amazing changes to happen by just sharing with people how what happens in their area has a big impact on other people in other areas. And that's one of the hardest aspects of change for us to manage. So when you said employee experience, that's where my brain went, because before you have a great customer experience, you've got to deliver a really good employee experience.
That's for sure. Now, I know when we start talking about mindfulness, we start talking about inspiration, creativity, a lot of things are found when we start talking about quotes, and we love them on the show. And we want to hear as many as we can possibly get. We have many of them on our show notes pages on our website at fastleader.net for people to quote, and we turn a lot of them into graphics. But is there a quote or two that kind of stands out for you that gives you some mindfulness, power, or inspiration that you can share?
Yeah. Before I tell you what the quote is, I'll tell you why it's meaningful to me. In America, we tend to measure everything, and measurement gives us that comfort that we're doing the right thing, that we're hitting our ROIs. But measurement also has a really strong bias in it, because you can only measure what you can see. And a lot of things that matter to customers aren't things that we have measures for yet, like how they feel, what they care about, what they gravitate to, their favorites, those kinds of things. And we all are emotional and very human beings. So numbers aren't the way we all think all the time. They say 80-something% of what we do is subconscious. We're not even aware of it. So my favorite quote is one that actually one of my colleagues developed. I can't take ownership of this, although I do repeat it all the time. No matter how hard you try or how much you spend, your brand can't be any better than what your customers experience. And what that means is at the end of the day, you can have all the metrics and all the cool programs and the best digital signage and interactive stuff everywhere in your store, your hospital, or your hotel. But if it doesn't make the experience noticeable, memorable, and shareable to the clients, to the customers, to the patients, to the guests, it doesn't matter. You've got to design for adoption. And that's one of the beauties of customer experience design, in my opinion, is that you can work on the change, which is usually a combination of process, technology, and people, but you can also make sure that people buy into that so they can authentically deliver it. It's exactly the same process. You just have to do it twice. That's why I love that phrase so much.
Well, and thanks for sharing that. And also thanks for giving us the reasoning and a little bit more detail about it. I mean, when I put all this together, you started talking about the maturation process in your 20s and 30s and the mindfulness. You started talking about paying attention to detail. I mean, we're not there. When some of us aren't there, at our 50, age either, and also being in that 20 age group or even in the teenage group, how do you move forward faster and get to those points to where you can gain that wisdom? I always talk about the quote, one of my favorites is that, the unfortunate reality is that, the Lord didn't give us, youth and wisdom at the same time. Right. So it's a process. We have to mature through it. But, and the way that we do that, and you and I talked about this before we got on the show, is that, man, we make mistakes. That's how we learn. We have to actually go through some, humps in order to come to those learnings and gain that wisdom. Is there a story that you can share with us where you've got over the hump and you actually gained a lot of wisdom from it?
Well, I don't know if I've ever gained a lot of wisdom. It seems to come in really small pieces over time. But recently, and I'm in my 50s now, so you can teach an old dog new tricks. I was doing some just random learning. I belong to a number of organizations, and one that I don't belong to is the Southeastern Association of Facilitators. But every once in a while, I'll go to a completely new group just for the heck of it to see what I can learn. So I go to this meeting, and they have a facilitation there by a director, a theater director. And he takes us through some really fun theater games, and we have a discussion about how the authenticity of theater can really help bring out the best in conversations and things like that. Well, it was pretty interesting. But during one of the exercises, I actually felt something that I had never felt before. And I couldn't quite put my finger on what it was, but I knew that it was transformative. And because I already knew that experiences were all about transforming people or leading them up to points of discovery where they transform themselves, I wanted to dig into it. So I called the director up and I invited him out to lunch, and we talked a little bit. And then he said, take a class. and he gave me a free pass to take a class at the Alliance Theater. So I took an acting class, and I am by no means an actor. I did a junior high school play, but that's my whole career so far. But we dug into that idea of what is it that can help another person to feel transformed. And long story short, a year later, we introduced a new service called human prototyping, which uses human beings, customers and our clients, together with theater actors and directors to create a service design environment where we can work on the human side of things, not just on the technical aspects of a software rollout or the voice of customer numbers and all kinds of things like that. So for me, that was a huge epiphany that happened just recently.
Well, I mean, that sounds fascinating. So, when I start thinking about, the value of that and being perceived, so you mentioned something about understanding your customer, being able to have things fit and be of value within their perception, their world, and their environment. I mean, how do you have something like that be perceived of value to potential clients?
The first couple of times we did it, it was really, really hard because we had to sell people vaporware. Said, "Are you sure this will work?" Well, no, we think it will. So that was a big selling job, and it came with a guarantee. So that's a great way to get your ideas trialed. So what we found out is that when we did this with a quick service restaurant here in the area, that they actually discovered better ways to do their service innovation, and they adopted some of our methods. When we did it with a disruptive .com startup, they found out that their messaging was way off base and they needed to make some adjustments, both in terms of the order of exposition, as well as in some of the ethnic components of the story. They were making some big mistakes that they weren't even aware of. So ROI, going back to that beginning part of our conversation, is usually about figuring out what is my investment going to be worth going forward. Typically, it means, is the investment I already made going to be sustained? So when we take something like human prototyping and say, hey, this is going to help your ROI, and the client is looking at it in arrears, like, well, my previously made investments make sense with this, can't say that they will. But going forward, it absolutely does help, because we can help, we help businesses figure out what their change is going to be accurately, and we let them make all the mistakes they can while they're still on the theater stage before they go and roll it out. Like, from your background with call centers, you might have a new script come out or a whole new series of scripts or a special offer. You don't really find out until the 100th or 500th call is made that something's not working. And then it takes another few days and another few thousand calls go by. Imagine being able to test that stuff out before you go. And I think we should redo this whole section, going back to the question of the hump question, because this one just went way off to the side.
No, this is really, really helpful and insightful. And so I'm actually going to put you on the spot a little bit, Mike, because you're one of those folks that shares openly and without any type of expectation of getting anything in return. And I'm sure that in itself has given you quite abundance in your life. But I know also that we often, as folks, we have patterns. And some of those patterns are in the advice that we give, right? So we find ourselves kind of giving some of the same advice because it's been so powerful and impactful on us, and hopefully it will be on others. So if you were to say of a piece of advice that you have given to folks that you find yourself giving more and over that seems to have value, what is it?
It's really easy to answer that question. If you're looking to make a big change in your life, or if you're just getting started, like right out of school, you have a lot of different options. People tend to try to do what they think they, air quotes, should do. Well, going back to what my Uncle Sam told me about finding what you love, and loving what you do, I found that if you pick what you want to learn the most, it's one of the smartest things that you can do. So think mindfully about, what would you like to learn next? That's going to give you a hint about the things that you like. And it'll also get you closer to completing life's puzzle. Now, you never finish that puzzle, but the closer you get to finishing it, the better you feel about the work that you do, the more of a magnet you become for other people, and the more influence you can wield. So there's more responsibility with that, And you've got to get smarter. You've got to get better. You've got to get better at things that aren't in your wheelhouse so that you connect what you know to others. So ratchet that back. And it's all about know what you want to learn next and then go with your heart in that direction. And you'll open up all kinds of opportunities. Just shutting down the doors of the things that you don't want to do creates all kinds of opportunity and abundance in your time, in your thinking ability, in your openness to try and do new things. And can I add one more thing?
Absolutely.
If you know that you want to learn something, like I learned this when I was like 14 or 15, I was really working on my tennis game. One of our neighbors said, Mike, if you want to get better at tennis, you have to play with people who are better than you. And that sharpens your game. Now, convincing them to play with you, I learned was a whole different skill set, But after I learned that, so that made me a little bit stronger too. And playing with better tennis players made me a better tennis player. So that's part of the thing behind learning. It also works, one last thing, if you don't mind. It also works with our vendors and our clients. Every time I hire a contractor and every time I work with a client, and I do this religiously, we have a conversation. You might call it ex parte if you're an attorney, but outside of the contractual terms, we have an agreement about what the client wants to learn and what they want their people to learn. And we both make adjustments from our individual sides to make sure that learning happens. That way, there's more than just a service provided and a check at the end of the day. People are strengthened, capabilities are adjusted and improved, and people feel really good about what they've done.
When you think about a lot of the things that you've had experience with, the things that you want to learn in order to continue your growth, as well as those that are important to you, when you think about all of that, what are some of your goals?
My goals right now are honestly a little bit fuzzy. I know that I'd like to diversify the business that I do so that it can be even more successful financially. I realize I have a duty or a responsibility to those that I work with to do a really good job. And I'm also quite aware that the way the world works has changed dramatically in the last few years. I feel like brand new at doing business because all the rules have changed. And it's not an unfamiliar feeling for me, because when I traveled overseas as an exchange student to Brazil and to Russia, all my cultural props were just kicked out from under me. It's like a guy on crutches and he has no crutches or cane to walk with. You're just kind of left to your own devices. What do? You've got to make sense of the language, the culture, the patterns, the eating, the food, the questions. And you've got to figure all that out from scratch. That's kind of how I feel right now with all of the change that's going on with social media and influence and trust and referrals and where does business come from. And a lot of people are ready to take your check and offer you service, but they're more concerned about making money than they are making you money. So it's very confusing right now for so many people that I talk to find that right mix of things to do. So I'm taking my own advice. I'm being mindful. I'm listening. I'm hanging out with people that are smarter than me. And I'm trying a bunch of different things, trying not to create so much change that it's confusing for people who already know me. But that's the honest answer to the question right now, is figuring out how the world works so I can, remain relevant and enjoy that brand that I built for so long.
And the Fast Leader Legion wishes you the very best. Now, before we move on, let's get a quick word from our sponsor. The number one thing that contributes to customer loyalty is emotions. So move onward and upward faster by gaining significantly deeper insight and understanding of your customer journey and personas with emotional intelligence. With your empathy mapping workshop, you'll learn how to evoke and influence the right customer emotions that generate improved customer loyalty and reduce your cost to operate. Get over your emotional hump now by going to empathymapping.com to learn more. All right, here we go, Fast Leader listeners. It's time for the Hump Day Hoedown. Okay, Mike, the Hump Day Hoedown is the part of our show where you give us good insights fast. So I'm going to ask you several questions, and your job is to give us robust yet rapid responses that are going to help us move onward and upward faster. Mike Wittenstein, are you ready to hoe down?
I am ready. Let's go.
All right. So what do you think is holding you back from being an even better leader today?
I think being even more mindful and paying even more attention to those that I serve.
What is the best leadership advice you have ever received?
That one's easy. I was working at Martin Marietta one summer, and a woman named Marge Bell was my manager. She gave me 2 lessons that I've never forgotten, and I've often repeated on stage. The first one is, you can't teach a pig to sing. Now, you've heard that before, but she added this phrase: it doesn't work, and it pisses off the pig. And coming from a large corporate environment, I got a chance to see that. You can't push change on people that they don't want. You've got to learn enough about them to introduce it the right way. The other thing that Marge Bell taught me was to find out what it takes to make somebody else's job easier, and then to do it for them without them asking. And she was a big corporate politician kind of a person. She got so much done from the very low level director that she was at, working all the way up the organization by applying that principle. So I got a chance to see that, and I really like that advice.
What is one of your secrets that you believe contributes to your success?
I think it's that ability to see patterns. People look to me for, what's coming. They want the comfort of knowing what's around the corner. And because I just see the world a little differently, I think that's one of the things I can offer them.
What do you feel is one of your best tools that helps you lead in business or life?
Best tool is probably listening. I'm a professional speaker. I've worked in 25 something countries now. And in order to be a good speaker, you really have to first be a good listener, because you're not talking at people or to people. You're talking with people and hopefully for them. And if you don't pay attention to who they are and where they're coming from, there's no way your message is going to get through effectively.
What would be one book, and it could be from any genre, that you'd recommend to our listeners?
The book that had the biggest impact on me when I was in my late 30s was recommended and written by a guy at IBM named Steve Heckel. The name of the book is Adaptive Enterprise, and it taught me how to look at a business as a system. Made a big difference in the way I work.
Okay, Fast Leader listeners, you can find links to that and other bonus information from today's show by going to fastleader.net/Mike Wittenstein. Okay, Mike, this is my last Hump Day Hoedown question. Imagine you were given the opportunity to go back to the age of 25, and you have been given the opportunity to take the knowledge and skills that you have now back with you. But you can't take everything. You can only choose one. So what skill or piece of knowledge would you take back with you, and why?
I would take back confidence. It takes people a wide variety of years to figure out that they are confident. Truth of the matter is, everybody's got confidence inside of them. And the sooner you find it, the more you can have a positive influence on others. So that's what I would like to have first, because people follow confidence.
Mike, it was an honor to spend time with you today. Can you please share with the Fast Leader Legion how they can connect with you?
Sure. Please visit me on our website for lots of great information and contact as well. The address is www.storyminers.com. STORYMINERS. And Jim, it has been absolutely amazing being on the show with you. Thank you so much.
Mike Wittenstein, thank you for sharing your knowledge and wisdom. The Fast Leader Legion honors you and thanks you for helping us get over the hump. Thank you for joining me on the Fast Leader Show today. For recaps, links from every show, special offers, and access to download and subscribe, if you haven't already, head on over to fastleader.net so we can help you move onward and upward faster.